Don't be bashful. People that need to see. I want to welcome you. Is this coming through? Yes. I'm so glad you all could come. And we're planning to go to the garden after Valerie's given her explanatory and visual talk. I've invited people from a lot of different groups here in hopes that once you've seen this wonderful garden, you'll begin to think, how can we have more of these in Jacksonville, and how can we work together to make this happen? Because it's different, and it's not something that's just going to happen automatically. I want to thank my friends at the Comer Museum, Emily and Hope, who helped me get this email invitation out. I would never have been able to send it out without their help. Thank Valerie and her wonderful volunteers who are going to continue to help us. And the wonderful food is being provided by the Chef's Garden. And I'm sure there are other people I should be thanking. I've got it written down somewhere. And Valerie especially too. But anyway, I want to give you just a brief picture of Valerie. She grew up in Mandarin, went to Mandarin High School, and then took off for Sarah Lawrence. Got a little outside influence. And then somehow she ended up going to Hawaii in 2001 to take a permaculture course. And she stayed there for 5 years working on farms and learning. Then she went off to Panama to do the same, Bolivia and Argentina. So she has been all over the place learning about all different kinds of how to grow things better than what we're doing. She knows what she's talking about. She's back in the United States. I met her at the first One Spark, Jacksonville. I had heard about her, but was so enchanted with what she was talking about, I went to see her garden, which she and Eli had created, and said to her, can you please come and look at my property and see if there's some way we can have something like that here? And she said, oh yes. And that's where it started, and like Mopsy, it grew. And now you're going to come and see all of it, and I think we're going to have a nice, clear afternoon after this.
Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you for your vision and your courage to have a food park at your personal residence in Mandarin. I'd also like to thank Eli Vidalia for all of your support and knowledge, and Grant Ward for doing the beautiful aerial photography. The one on the easel back there is just one of the many he took of the progression of the garden. And last but not least, I'd like to thank all of you for the privilege and the opportunity to share with you the strategies and techniques that I use in the food park gardens. And thank you for your time to come out and listen and observe for yourself.
Can everybody hear? Because sometimes this...
Was that too close to the mic?
No, you're good.
No.
Right.
Okay. It's fine here, but I just want to be sure.
Okay. So it was just about 1 year ago that we broke ground at Miss Comer's place, and this is what it looked like a little over a year ago. The meadow in the front acre, and you can go ahead and do the next slide. So it's a very new food park project. It takes from 3 to 5 years for these food parks to become self-maintaining. But I'm really glad you're here today to come and see where it is right now. It's very important for you not to only see a mature system, but one that's in the make. If we only saw adults and never saw toddlers, we might find their walking ways a bit strange and be unsure of their future. But the food parks here and the ones that will be built have a very bright future, I can assure you. Next slide, please. So this is what it looks like today from the overhead view. Here's 27 fruit trees, pioneer species, herbs, medicinal plants, perennials, natives, and annual vegetables. And here's some of the food coming out of the food park. We have plentiful squash of different kinds, heirloom, native Seminole pumpkin, cowpeas, strawberries and snow peas. And this is a Ronconte squash. It's a heirloom from Baker Creek. So we know that food and water are necessities for humans, and we know that our water supply is being depleted, but did you also know that our food is becoming rare and endangered? Joseph Simcox, an ethno-food botanist and world traveler, has told us that there are 10,000 edible, delicious, staple food crops in the world, and we're relying on and making commerce from 12 of them. Now that, I don't know the percentage, but that's a dismally low number. But not only are we just relying on these 12 plants, but we're taking these 12 plants as if they are all that we have and manipulating them to make them more resistant to self-imposed ecological disasters such as drought or bug pestilences, trying to make them more resistant to our chemicals and such. So in the past 100 years, we've lost half of our topsoil, half of our oil, half of the rainforest, a third of all natural gas, a third of all oil, our coal. So if we're not looking at regenerating our soil and replenishing our water supplies, we're just basically chasing rainbows. So we can look at the problems, but permaculture is a way of turning those problems into solutions. Permaculture is the design system I use to make food parks. The word is coined by Bill Mollison back in the 1970s. It's a combination of two words, permanent and agriculture, because he felt we couldn't have permanent settlements without permanent agriculture. It's a design system based in ethics, caring for people, caring for the earth, and returning the surplus. Now the goal and the exciting part about permaculture is that it reverses the consumption model to that of one of creation. We can actually replenish our groundwater, and we can create soil. We can build the topsoil, we can replenish the groundwater, we can regrow the forest, we can create sustainable communities and retard and even reverse global warming. And with all this, we can improve everyone's quality of life. So permaculture is a solution. It's the only one I know of that works. That's why I do it. But if I had to sum up permaculture in one sentence, it would be this. Permaculture is the conscious design of agriculturally productive ecosystems that have the diversity, stability, and resilience of natural ecosystems. They have the diversity, stability, and resilience of natural ecosystems because we observe nature. So if we look at nature here in this photograph, perhaps we see that there are many layers in the forest. There are tall trees letting light in, lower trees, shrubs, there's a ground cover, leaf litter, and vines growing up the trees. So in permaculture, we look to nature and we understand what's happening, and then we mimic what's going on in our food systems. So in the canopy layer, the tall tree layer, we put in pioneer trees or large fruit and nut trees. Then we put in dwarf fruit trees. Under that we put in edible hibiscus perhaps, or berries, then comfrey and different root vegetables. And as a ground cover we can put sweet potato or melons. And for vertical climbers, yams or different kinds of gourds. And there's stability because there's an interconnectivity and cooperation rather than competition. Now in this design system, there's only 2 layers or levels. And it makes the system inherently unstable. And this produces a lot of maintenance and a lot of inputs and a lot of work. And turf companies even say a beautiful lawn doesn't happen by itself. It doesn't. It happens with a lot of work and labor and input from us. So if we work with nature, food systems can largely grow themselves. Nature, if we observe her, also creates her own fertility. So now what's happening here is leaves, nature's fertility. She drops them to the ground and they become and generate good soil. And we all know that worms love to eat them and create good soil. But here in Jacksonville, they're being put to the curb. And there is no composting facility here, so they just go to the dump. They get shredded, bags and all, and get put as a bottom fill layer in the dump. Now we can turn this problem into a solution as well and take these leaves and bring them back to our food forest gardens. Cardboard is another way to speed up the process and get our soils regenerating. It makes a great weed mat and turns into soil itself. Wood chips are another free, underutilized resource that create fertility. Tree trimmers have to take these wood chips to the dump, have to pay to take them to the dump, and so it's a great resource that creates soil. And bringing community to get together to create these food park systems is a great way to enrich our communities. So what does it look like when we implement what we've learned from nature into our food systems? Well, here are some examples. Now you can do this in any climate, on any size piece of land. This one is Eric Tonesmeyer's in Massachusetts. It's his backyard. And 4 years later, after implementing some of his observations from nature, he's turned it into this food oasis. So once you get these systems going, it takes less and less input and produces more and more yields over time. This is in Tucson, Arizona. It's a public walkway, and they get less than 12 inches of rain per year. Now, just from observing nature and catching and storing water, which we'll talk about in a minute, he was able to create this oasis on the public walkway. And this is my first food park project. Eli Pajalia there and I started 4.5 years ago in Arlington. And this is before we moved in. It was basically a parking lot. And then by bringing in the wood chips, using cardboard, leaves, the proper plants, and observing how the layers work in nature, this was 2 years later. And then the next picture is 4.5 years later. So you can see the edible forest garden is already taking shape. Now these are examples of smaller sizes, but they can also be done on really large scales. This is the Laos Plateau in China. It's hundreds of thousands of acres. Now obviously you can't bring in compost and run irrigation lines for this kind of scale. And look at, it's been desertified, overgrazed, and desertified, overgrazed, just bad agricultural practices in general. And then this is 14 years later, the next slide. So we can desertify the planet, but we also know how to regenerate the earth as well. So a huge part of doing this is how we capture and store water in our landscape. And this is how we design for water in our landscapes right now. We basically run it off to the storm drains as fast as possible and out to the river and the ocean, and along with it, any fertilizers or pesticides that we may have put on our lawn or gardens. Well, another way of looking at using this precious resource of water is capturing it and storing it in the landscape as much as possible. One technique that we use in permaculture to do this is called swale. It's basically just a ditch dug on contour, which means perpendicular to slope, and the rainwater is able to penetrate past that any hard surface layer and percolate into the ground. Now the soil that we dig out of the ditch, we put on this downhill side of the swale, and it helps capture more water. And we also put reparative plants on that, it's called the berm, and it helps slow the water down and let it percolate down into the groundwater. The next slide. So over time, eventually this forms a lens of water that revitalizes our springs, replenishes our groundwater, and eventually even replenishes our aquifer. So what agricultural system do you know today that puts more water back into the ground than it does on the crops or lets evaporate into the air? So we can grow nutritious, delicious, organic food in abundance for people and also replenish our groundwater to create soil. And we can do this with low technology. This is an A-frame level you can use to make contours. Or you can use something like a laser level, which I used at Cheryl's place. So, I used the laser level, and even though Cheryl's front acre is only about 5 to 7 inches of slope, there's a lot of flat areas in Florida, but we can still utilize what we have. And here you can see a picture of the ditch dug on contour with the berm, with the soil, and then it's planted with regenerative plants. And then that swale is filled with wood chips, free wood chips, and it doubles as a pathway. So it's integrated into the design of the food park, and you don't even know this free irrigation system that's helping replenish our groundwater and springs is even there. And then any pathways that are not swales, the cardboard is put down to help speed up the regenerative process of the soil, and then wood chips are put on top, and it's integrated into the design of the system. And there's 5 main swales on her property, capturing and storing water in her landscape. So looking to nature again, creating soil and fertilizer using plants. So some of these plants, we used to do this, are called nitrogen fixing plants. They take nitrogen out of the air and fix it in their roots and nodules, and when the plants die back, they release that nitrogen into the soil so the plants surrounding it can uptake that nitrogen. And we also get food from a lot of these plants. There's delicious cow peas here. You harvest the peas and then they die back and leave a mulch on top of the soil, which we leave there. And then the roots die back, releasing their nitrogen, feeding the plants around them. And this is in the summer. In the winter, we do a cover crop of Austrian winter peas, or other, there's various crops. But these you can take cuttings of the tops and have delicious salads or sell them to restaurants. And you can see it was covering as a ground cover her whole property, and then as it dies back, it feeds the plants around it. And there's lots and lots of various crops that we can use to do this. There's fava beans and also daikon radishes that give food and fertility back to the earth. So putting it all together, here's some examples around town that the Food Park Project's been working on, or has worked on. This is a project in Riverside in Brooklyn at the J.S. Johnson Community Center. It's called Don't Miss a Beat, an after-school academic achievement program. And it started off as this 30 by 32 lot here. And then we came in and put in cardboard as a sheet mulch. So this kills the grass and breaks down into good soil. And the wood chips, again, the free, underutilized resource as pathways, brought in the compost. And then the kids came in and seeded the property, the garden, and laid down mulch. And they grew their first crop of cow peas. And so this is a regenerative crop. It's nourishing the soil and also giving a crop of cow peas. So these kids are using it as an educational resource and also as learning to grow food, learning about ecology. And it's called the Brooklyn Life Garden. But unfortunately, this garden a handicap parking space was put on it by the city. And this is just a look at policy in Jacksonville. Perhaps we can find a way to fix the policies in Jacksonville, because we're looking to end food deserts, but then the food is being taken away and put in the dumpsters. So here's another project. This is at Rethreaded downtown. It's a nonprofit that helps women coming out of the sex trade. It's a great nonprofit. This is a permaculture meetup group. It has over 500 members right now. So we all came together and helped put in a garden on the side of the building, using those free wood chips again, and compost and newspaper. And regreening, they had lots of collard greens and loofahs and tomatoes and all kinds of plants. And then on the outside as well was regenerative plants, and people from the neighborhood would come and pick greens and cowpeas and such. And again, the city decided it was better to take it out than to leave it in the community. So it's really a problem that we need to address. But on the positive side of this, all of the plants from the previous season had dropped their seeds, and we can see what a regenerative food system this really is. Nobody did anything to this garden. It just came back on its own. You can see there's daikon radishes and cowpeas and mustards, and it's all coming back. So the power of the seeds is very important, and part of the food park's mission is to be a living seed bank for Jacksonville and for the nation. We teamed up with Joseph Simcox. He started an organization called Gardens Across America. He gives out these rare and endangered food plants from all over the world from his travels, and allows people to grow them out for free. And all he requests is giving half of the seeds back to him. Then you keep half and you keep any of the fruits. And the idea is not to get these plants off of the rare and endangered list, because a lot of these plants grow much better in our regions with less work, and we don't need all of these other inputs. So some of these exciting plants are something like gak fruit. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of a gak fruit, but it's delicious, and it's from northern Vietnam, which has a similar climate to ours. It's 10 times the beta-carotene of carrots. It's got 10 times the lycopene content of tomatoes. So this highly nutritious, interesting food, traditionally it's used to color rice, so that's one way that you could use it. Next slide. This is ashwagandha. It's in the tomato family, Solanaceae. So we can easily grow it here. If you know of the Ayurvedic medicinal system, it's over 3,000 years old, one of the most ancient medical traditions. It's one of the top Ayurvedic herbs, and they use it for people coming out of grave illnesses to help them rebuild their immune systems. Molokhia. This is a wonderful plant. It loves our hot summers. It gets more taller and more vigorous the hotter it gets. So Molokhia, it's a national dish in Egypt. It's the most widely eaten green in the Middle East. And we can grow it here in Jacksonville very easily. It's also, you may know, jute, if you know that word. The stem is used for cordage or fiber. So a very valuable plant we can grow here. Apios americana, it's a native to North America. It's a root, a starch like potatoes. We can grow that here. And ahipa, it's another starch root like a potato. You can eat it raw or cooked. You can eat the seeds that have 28% protein. You can eat the leaves on the plant as well. So, and this is glass corn. This is just an example of selection by farmers. We can select these amazing, beautiful plants. And the last slide showed all different kinds of fruits that we can grow here, from figs to pomegranates, grapes. It's okay. You know all the wonderful fruits we can grow here. There we are: jujubes, loquats, starfruit, pawpaws, mulberries, pecans, olives, and all kinds of citrus, but many varieties of all of these different kinds of fruit trees as well. But we know from my spiel here is, and even just by looking at this picture, I hope it doesn't appeal to your eye. It hurts my eyes. So we're not going towards desertification here, or just one kind of crop. We're looking again at natural systems. We're looking at the layers that are created. We're looking at the fertility that is created, how to store and capture water. And then, so this is another way of how to plant the fruit trees. They look like this. This is a food park system way of growing food and fruit trees and other herbs and medicinals. They all work together in cooperation. We can grow abundant crops with less labor and less input over time. This is in the Pacific Northwest. Apple tree with a guild of squash and flowers around it. So these parks can be beautiful places with picnic tables or dance pavilions, places you can take your family and your kids, teach them how food grows while we're regenerating the planet. And this is Cheryl's food park. As you can see, the layers are, she had older citrus trees, so the layers are already coming in, and you can see how it's coming together, which it's there. So as a thank you for coming and an educational tool as well, we have a roselle plant for you, which is an edible hibiscus. The leaves are edible, they're a little lemony, you can put them in salads. And the calyx, which is the fleshy part around the flower, is also edible and used to make tea, red zinger tea, you might have heard of. And these cards we use for all of the plants that we'll have in our nursery. And so it shows you where it is in the layers of the forest. So you can take the plant and look around you and observe and see where it might fit in the system. And just a reminder, we're doing this for the next generation, and we know that we can recreate soil, and we should have the same opportunities for these kids that we had, and give them healthy food and healthy bodies. And that's my presentation for the Food Park Project. There's many other techniques.
Thanks, Valerie. I know people are eager to go and look at the garden, but I'm just wondering, before we separate, if there are any questions, and if anybody has any thoughts about how we could work together to try to make some of this happening. I have people from the Riverkeeper here, from the University of North Florida, and the Asher Garden. We've got people from Greenscape, and the Lambert Community Center and Historical Museum, and all people I think are concerned about trying to grow things in a different way. And I can send you all maybe an email that has the addresses of people who did come here and some people who didn't. But if you have any questions you want to ask right now, please do. And please walk over and see the garden, and then please come back because we have masses of food. We plan for a cast of thousands. Thank you, Valerie. It's so interesting.
Yes?
I was just curious, because some of the fruits and vegetables are not ones we are accustomed to. As you're educating the public, how do you help let them know? I mean, do the science work, or you try to orient them to what is edible and what actually the plant is, and understand the identification markers? They don't have that historical record.
That's a great question, and there'll be educational talks and educational tours through the park. So people don't know that, there are workshops and ongoing education that happens in the parks, so that, their friends may come to the workshop and then they can teach their friends and so on. So yeah, there is a huge educational process that needs to happen too.
Yeah, that's not something we said, but this is a private garden, but our intention is to have small groups of people be invited to come and learn. Valerie will tell them about it. We've got some signs up already that talk about what the different fruits and vegetables are and how they can be used, and the fact that we are saving the seeds. Some of the things that we planted this year came from last year, like the Seminole squash, which are so good. And her point that there's all this variety, and we're just eating the same old thing. And I go to Publix and Whole Foods, and I see the same old thing, and then I think, I've got something in the garden which is so much better. So we really need to be taking advantage of it. We are using this as an education thing. Part of the reason I thought about doing it is we have a conservation easement on the property, and this is going to be part of my public benefit. You see, I have to provide some sort of public benefit, and inviting people, small groups again, school children maybe, people that want to learn how to do this, to the garden to look at this is another way I can provide a public benefit and satisfy the North Florida Land Trust and the federal government.
I have a website too that hopefully will get updated and have a lot of these foods on there too. So,
There's a garden that's been recently installed behind a big church housing project on Edgewood Avenue. I'm just wondering if you were involved with that.
yeah, I was involved. Well, in the planning in the beginning, I was involved, and I came to a few of their work days. I'm not through the whole thing, but I've watched it grow a little bit, and they're using the same principles of permaculture to grow that garden. Mm-hmm. So it is a growing movement, yeah.
And it's important too where you get your seeds,
Mm-hmm.
because the seeds are being modified, and I was impressed to see the squash that was bumpy, because now you go buy squash in the store and it's smooth,
They're all the same.
and I've heard that it's been modified so much that the bees are not pollinating the squash crops because of that.
Mm.
So how do you know where to get the right seed?
Well, there are some great seed companies out there. Baker Creek,
So you
Heirloom
just
Seeds
have to know.
being one of them, yeah. And then
And be careful where you
Southern
get your
Exposure.
seeds.
Southern Exposure, Fedco is one. And then also creating our own local seed banks
Right.
and seed swaps. That's really the way to do it, is because then they become heirloom to this particular region and this particular climate. And so that they grow well here from the genetics. Yeah.
How do you choose your projects? Or do people come to you with different projects in mind to do?
Yes, actually, the next project would be behind European Street Cafe, actually, on University in Beach. They have a spot behind the restaurant that they want to put in a garden, and I've worked with Carrie for a long time. And so I've looked at the land, and, we look at different aspects, where the trees are, where the sun is, and how much water they get, and what's best to do with the land. So that's going to be next on the agenda.
Well, I think there are a lot of organizations in Jacksonville, because I'm on the board of Greenscape, and Anna Dooley is the director of that, and they are currently planting fruit and nut trees in different locations beyond just all the other trees that they plant through the mitigation program with JEA. And Leslie Pierpont is here with the native plants, and we're also part of the Garden Club of America here in Jacksonville, and their project, well, Leslie's been that for much longer than I have, but they also get involved in doing worthwhile projects.
So it's like they're planting nut and fruit trees as like street plantings?
They can be, I mean, they've done them at churches or.
I've seen that in other cities,
Yeah.
like in San Francisco.
I mean, that's the
apple
main,
trees.
it's promoting, protecting.
Sure.
And,
But you have to be sure the city is going to approve it and see it as like native landscaping, or else they'll just come and
Well,
mow
actually,
it down.
well, that's where coming in tandem with if one had known that there was going to, they had a handicap parking issue or something like that. When, I don't, who knows how that works, I mean, in terms of the city, but there has to be better communication for
Because
sure.
Detroit is
Definitely.
doing a lot of, all the blighted properties.
Yes.
They're really reseeding all over the city, and everybody seems to be happy with it.
Oh, God, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get together and come to some meetings and be involved with what's going on there.
I think that's why most of us came.
Yeah.
I recently read that Seattle is about to create a food forest.
7 acres, yeah.
I followed that a little bit. They've already started on it. They've done a few acres on it.
And I was curious about what they have put in place with the government that maybe we could try to
Emulate.
Yeah. I mean, it's a model.
It's
It's
gotta
the
be.
first big model within a metropolis like that. So, we'll have to see how it goes, and then people can model after that and see what they have to go through to get it all done. Cityrepair.org is another organization in Oregon that has ran into a lot of with natural building and planting gardens on public space, and they've found ways to get around all these codes and stuff, and they educate people how to do it.
Maybe it needs to be.
City
If we
repair
had
dot
property that, I don't know if private or public would be better, but, we can just get started doing it. If, the city isn't gonna be able to come in and take it down, then we have all the resources we need to get started, really. So,
It's pretty much endless resources in this town with leaves, wood chips, it's really easy to build fertility and get a garden going.
It's a good
And
climate.
once I have a tree man like Selvig who knows that we like to have the wood chips, and so he was in the neighborhood and cutting down a tree, and he comes up the driveway and says, "You need some more wood chips, Selvig?" And so, they just
I
round
know,
them
it
up
would be a
and
great
take 'em
business to
in.
start, is
Yeah.
composting all these
Yeah.
wood chips from tree
So when the
trimmers.
word gets out,
There's a lovely movie free on the internet called Back to Eden, with a man who builds gardens in Washington State with just wood chips. And it's an amazing movie. It's a really good movie.
Again, I'm sorry.
Back to Eden.
Back to-
It's a free movie on the internet.
Over time, just the wood chips create the best soil. Yeah.
Been doing it for 25 years, I think, in the same spot out there.
You have to guarantee that they're not sprayed with the bug spray or termite, anti-termite.
The only thing you really have to watch out for is alleliopathic trees like walnuts and
Okay.
pecan and stuff can have an effect on plants growing
Most
around
of the
them.
trees they're chipping up are oak or
Okay.
pine or
Around here, camphor is the one to watch out.
camphor.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I've never had a problem using camphor either. So
You mean if it's,
in
if
the
it's
pathways at least,
Yeah, it's got the lilium pattern, so I don't know about when it's dead, when it's alive.
right?
As long as it's moss.
Is once it has mycelium growing through it and actual mushrooms pop out of it, then it's safe to
Oh,
use.
good.
This is what I've been told.
we have lots of those, especially on the
It's like a
path
whole
near
other science.
the viburnum. All kinds of things growing there.
Well, I mean, if you guys you want to walk over there and take a tour of what's
Good.
going on. Yeah, what's going on over there?
And please come back when you're, as you come back.
doggy bag.
We're going to, this is ours.
All right. Good you. It's good to see you, man. Good to see you. Been running into you a little bit lately.
That was good. That was great. It really went well. Yes, it was